Okay, so this is a little bit in the book that's it's a bit more miscellaneous stuff, rescue stuff, really important, what happens in emergencies and things like that. If you do the practical with us, we do a free breakdown rescue scenario, simply because I've spoken to friends of mine that don't have commercial marine backgrounds that have done their skipper's tickets, and they told me, oh, this happened, the motor conked out, or what, the rope got caught, and the way they solved the problem just amazed me that they could think like that. It just wasn't too clever. I think it's an impact of the emergency situation, the panic a little bit and just make some strange decisions. But anyway, if you do your practical with us, you get that thrown in for free, and you'll find it quite beneficial if it ever happens to you. Now, builder's plates. People ask me, oh, what size motor can I put on my boat and all this sort of thing. Now, or since 2006, I think it came law, that every boat, I think it was under 6 metres, by law has to have what we call a builder's plate. So a builder's plate just means it's got, how big a motor can you put on it, maximum horsepower, so you don't overpower it. How many people you can put on it. Buoyancy. It's law now that all new boats under that size have to have what we call basic flotation. So if you've got a boat pre-2006, you could have zero flotation, which means if you put a hole in it, it's obviously going to the bottom. Basic flotation means just that. You got some flotation, but it's not very good. So what basic flotation means is they just put a couple of bits of foam around, usually a squirt up the nose, a couple of bits down the back corners of the transom. So what happens is if you put a hole in the boat, it'll sink to water level, but still hold its maximum load, which will also be written on the builder's plate. How many people can you take? It could be 4, it could be 6, depending on the size of the boat. So each boat, even though it might be 5 metres, they're all subtly different. So builder's plate's got all that information. So basic flotation means you're going to get wet, but you still got something to hold on to. It won't go to the bottom. And then you got what we call level flotation. Usually you don't get this unless it's what we call in survey for a commercial application. So if you've got a commercial boat, then either like the ferry has a life raft that inflates if it sinks, or you have to have what we call level flotation, which, the Barramundi fishing guide up in Broome. So what happens is they just put more foam in it. So if he puts a hole in the boat, the bilge might fill with water, the bottom void of the boat might fill with water, but then the rest of the boat sits up out of the water. Okay, so it's just more foam. It's what they call level flotation. All right. Now, weather in WA is reasonably good forecasting. Bureau of Meteorology puts all the information out. Everyone's online these days. Different websites grab it, whether it's Sea Breeze. If you're going further out, Boy Weather's a good site for offshore stuff, because the offshore, once you get more than 20 miles out, it's a lot different than what's happening on the coastal stuff. Okay, so, but all these websites interpret their information from the Bureau of Meteorology's website anyway. So they're just usually in an easier format to understand. Okay, so winter we get our cold fronts. They come through, they push through. That brings the squalls, the heavy rain, big winds. That's when we put the boat away. In between the fronts, you get nice weather. But when the fronts are coming through, you stay away. Then you've got summertime, beginning of summer. November, December is usually windier in Perth. When you get the southeasterlies in the morning, it's offshore, but usually they're stronger. Okay, it might be nice on the coast, out on the beach, but you get 10 mile out and it's not nice. Okay, but usually if it's southeasterly, then you get a stronger sea breeze, southwesterly. So November, December, the temperature's warming up, but it's usually the windy time. And then when you get January, February, when it's hotter, you get the northeasterlies. Then usually we get weaker sea breezes. The southwesterly is usually a bit weaker, so it's usually better for boating. But the northeasterly can be quite strong in the morning. You just got to wait for it to back off a little bit. But usually the best time for boating in WA is that March, April, May, and then you got your September, October. that's usually the better time to get out there. But depending on where you go, if you're on the river, protected waters, that sort of stuff, it's not so critical. So if something does happen, okay, the book's pretty straightforward, common sense. You stay with your boat if you can. If you need to international distress signal, yeah, you got all your safety gear, whether it's your flares, your whatever, it doesn't matter. It's anything that grabs someone's attention. Because if you're driving along and you see someone, waving their hands, by law you've got to offer help if you can. Guys got saved a few years ago now, plane went over, their flares didn't work for whatever reason, so they got a bucket, put all their fishing line in it, a steel bucket, threw a match and a big puff of smoke went up, plane spotted that. So it's anything that catches your attention. They talk about a foghorn in the book, not too many foghorns here, but it's the same thing. It's just a signal that, hey, what's that? Okay, someone needs assistance. So you can't just drive past them. You don't have to tow them for whatever reason. You can if you want, obviously, but for whatever reason, you're the skipper of your boat. You offer assistance if you can, if you're able to, if it's needed. But towing is optional. That's your decision. You're making that call. Okay. If you're unlucky enough to be in the water, stay together. Okay. In the back of the book, they talk about the huddle technique, where everyone's staying together, linked up, trying to maintain body heat. Because depending on where you are in the state, it's a big state.